Hello everyone, my name is Chad Landmon. I'm the chair of the IP and FDA practice group at Axinn, Veltrop, and Harkrider. And I'm coming to you today to discuss an issue we've heard a lot about in the news in the fight against the COVID-19 virus. You've likely heard about FDA's grant of Emergency Use Authorizations, or EUAs, for certain products or diagnostics. And today I'm going to talk about the process of how one goes about obtaining an EUA, the various factors FDA considers, and what that means for the fight against the COVID-19 virus. Like many of you, I'm working remotely, which explains my casual dress, but I wanted to explain this process and what happens when someone obtains an EUA. As many of you know, to obtain approval typically for a drug product, for a medical device, for a diagnostic, you typically have to go through years worth of process at FDA. It can take years, require multiple filings, require extensive clinical studies to get approval. But obviously that doesn't work in a situation like a pandemic. And Congress, to address that issue through multiple legislation over the last couple decades, put in this process to obtain EUAs. The process starts by the Secretary of Health and Human Services declaring a public health emergency, what Secretary Azar did with COVID-19 back in February. Once that declaration is made, FDA is then allowed to consider EUA request. And in doing that, FDA considers how serious the disease is or the condition is, how effective the new treatment or diagnostic might be, conducts a risk-benefit analysis, and then finally considers whether there are alternatives that have already undergone FDA approval and whether those alternatives are available. There's a significant supply for patients and doctors. Now, before applying for an EUA, a sponsor really wants to get into contact with FDA because FDA will walk through all these factors for that particular product and what FDA is going to be looking for, particularly in the EUA application for that product. In addition, it's important if the sponsor can get a government sponsor. Obviously, government entities are often looking for these new treatments, new diagnostics, and if you can get one of those sponsors to help with the EUA, that will get the process sped along. Now, when you submit your request, you need to describe the product, its intended use, what the need is for the product, and include any safety or efficacy information you have. Now, obviously, you're not going to have the very detailed information, those clinical studies with tens of thousands of patients, because this is being done on an emergency basis. But whatever you do have, provide that to FDA. You also want to discuss the risks and the benefits of this new product or diagnostic, and any information you have on the chemistry or manufacturing of the product or the device. And including in that, whether your site operates under current good manufacturing practices or CGMP. That's important, and you want to let FDA know what you're doing. You also want to let FDA know what quantities you might have on hand or how quickly you can get those quantities out to doctors and patients, and provide comparable package inserts or instructions that you would with a normal product going through the normal FDA approval process, those instructions for patients and for doctors. Provide something comparable in your request. Now, keep in mind that certain requirements can be waived through an EUA. CGMP requirements can sometimes be waived. Prescription requirements can sometimes be waived. So keep that in mind and whether that's necessary for your product given the emergency that's at hand. Now, one thing FDA wants to continue to see is adverse event reporting. So you want to let FDA know how you intend to go about doing that with this new product. And one thing to keep in mind finally is the duration of the EUA. So typically it's set to be for a duration that lasts for the duration of the emergency, but that can be expanded. For example, years ago, certain diagnostics were approved through EUAs, and those Zika diagnostics have been extended over the years as we continue to have the Zika virus pop up. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Obviously, this is an important tool for HHS and FDA to get products and diagnostics to fight the COVID-19 virus. We have seen multiple EUAs be granted over the last month. Sometimes multiple EUAs are granted in a day. Certainly on the diagnostic side, we've seen a lot of those granted, but we certainly will see more as FDA and HHS continue the fight against the COVID-19 virus. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can always look our firm up at axinn.com, axinn.com, or you can reach out to me directly. My email address is clandmon, so that's CLANDMON at Axinn, AXINN.com. Thanks for your time today, and I hope you stay safe and stay healthy.